everyone, and welcome to our very final Montessori show. And Jean-Marie, it's lovely to be here with you.
Yes, it's lovely to be here, and it's kind of a bittersweet when you say it's the very last one, and then I'm thinking, oh, maybe it won't be. Because we were just talking about being at a Montessori Congress, and remember when we did a Montessori Congress in Prague? So who knows? But yes, the Montessori show has been going on for 9 years now, where Simone and I greet you and try to do our best to answer all your Montessori parenting questions, positive discipline, and so forth. And all good things also come to an end. We've kind of moved on in our different careers and businesses and just don't always have that energy. So it will all be on YouTube. You can go back and watch all of them. There's, I think, 45 different videos on different topics. So yeah, thank you for being here to record this last show.
Absolutely. And I think that, we have so many topics on YouTube. So there's not that much more that we need to cover. And there's many people now sharing about Montessori where 9 years ago, there really were not many of us. So
Yeah,
I
yeah,
don't think you're short of information. You can go to Jean-Marie's books, my books, and other things as well, and then jump into the archives. We'll send the link to the archives with the
yeah,
recordings
yeah.
um, to this
And,
replay.
and before we start, I kind of wanted you to maybe give us a little bit of update because I know we were talking before we let everybody in of kind of your Montessori journey that is kind of took a different turn after 22 years of being in the classroom. You
Yeah.
want to share a little bit about that?
Sure. So for those of you who don't know me, I've been running a Montessori playgroup for the last 17 years. It's called Jacaranda Tree Montessori. And I started in Montessori playgroups in 2004, back in Australia, where I worked for Fern Van Zyl at her playgroup called Down Under Three, which now no longer exists because she moved to a different part of Australia. And yeah, so then I was in the classroom in the middle of this year and I had this little knowing and it said, it's time to leave the classroom. And I had a tear in my eye at the same time as a very happy thought about how many people and families I got to work with and it's been very special. But it just was time, just like this show, good things even can come to an end. And I have a beautiful lady Yulia Adamczyk who took over the classes, and so Jacaranda Tree still exists and is providing this adult child class for for children under 3 years old in Amsterdam.
And was the person that took over a parent initially?
She
I
was. I
was,
met, and
okay.
actually, she met me when she came as a nanny first with another child, and then her eldest, so 14 years old ago, they were in my classroom. So I've known her a very long time, and
Oh,
it's
that's
very fun to
amazing. That's
have it
amazing. Yeah.
pass on to the Jacaranda
Yeah.
family.
Yeah.
And Jean Marie, you're doing lots of doula work and postpartum.
Yeah, yeah, I've kind of transitioned also to doing more in-person work, I think with my, digital work and I was missing human contact.
Mm.
And I've really gotten into the birth work and really supporting parents during really the very beginning of parenthood. So I do a lot of prenatal consultations, then I attend births, and then I am in their home for the postpartum, really helping them adjust to parenting. And that's really has been my focus this year, and I'm really, really enjoying it.
Yeah, we have lots of shows about newborns and things like that as well, which we've talked about. So maybe we'll pop some links into the show notes. But Jean-Marie does beautiful work, and it's very special.
Yeah.
And I'm not leaving the Montessori world. I'll still be sharing over on the Montessori Notebook blog and Instagram, and who knows, maybe even the podcast will come back with his extra space.
Yeah,
Well,
same here. 2025, my podcast paused. I had some, family things going on, and I just needed to focus on that. So I kind of every once in a while get a little tinge of maybe I should pick it up, but who knows? We'll see what 2026 brings us.
So I think it's time to dive into these questions.
Yes,
I had
yes.
some come in on Instagram. Maybe we can start with one of those,
Okay.
and then we'll move to. We've got some. If you have a question and you're live on the call, feel free to pop it into the chat, or you can raise your digital hand as well, and we can unmute you, and you can actually ask us as well. So there was one that, what are the areas that we need to have in a toddler class, and how do we teach language for toddlers? Would you like
Wait,
me to answer that one?
one area, what did you say? One area?
What areas do we need to have in a toddler class, and how do we teach language for toddlers?
So I love the whole language aspect.
Okay.
Uh,
You want to start with
the
that one part then?
Okay. So and I have to put a caveat on this. I have never taught in a toddler classroom. I've done the 0 to 3 training. I've done a lot of home setups and so forth, but I just love how the language is really about helping the child first of all, just the vocabulary, and we start with real objects that have textures, that have a smell. Maybe it's a basket of 3 fruits or vegetables, or flowers or herbs and things like that. So there's a real sensorial aspect to it because we know that the senses are the foundation for language. So there's the real objects. Then we go to objects that we can't have in the classroom, right? That bulldozer that the child is so fascinated with, or the elephant. And we have a very realistic looking object where we give language and so forth. And then we have those objects, whether they're realistic or not, or the real ones, and we match them with cards. So we're helping the child understand that everything can be represented in 2 dimensional, which I think is just fascinating, as opposed to jumping right into flashcards where most parents tend to do. Like, we need to bring them down that kind of that journey of understanding that concept, and then we can have just cards, but there is a real progression. Am I right about all that?
Yeah, exactly. And then there's also two other very important language materials that we have in the Montessori classroom. One is the adult, exactly. And so it's our conversations and asking simple questions. And if they say car, then we might say, you see the blue car, and we
Mm.
fill it out and reinforce their learning. Or if they make it incorrect, we may just say it back to them in the way that I would say it correctly. And so it's very non-judgmental. We never say no. We never withhold giving them an apple because they're not saying the word apple, all that kind of thing. It's very gentle and very positive and modeling a lot of rich language. Um, and then there's books, and beautiful books that are realistic because they relate to those things that they see in their daily life. They don't have this developed conscious brain which can imagine things yet. It's really based, as you say, in the senses. So one of the favorite books that I had in my classroom called Sunshine by Jan Ormerod. And it's a little girl who wakes up and she gets dressed, and her father makes breakfast with her, and they leave for the day. And there's no words in the book, so it gives you lots of opportunity to talk about rich language and all those kind of things as well. So the other parts of the Montessori classroom for toddlers are the eye-hand coordination or manipulatives area for psychomotor development. So then we're looking at things, the items for posting, puzzles with like simple knobs to start with, and then more complicated ones, lock boxes and a basket with opening and closing activities, lots of ways of manipulating things, stacking, sorting colors, and things like that. And then we have the practical life area. So there should always be space for them to look after plants in the classroom, to mop, to have cloths for cleaning up and all of those kind of things, as well as preparing food. We love
Food,
preparing
right.
food in our
Such an
classroom.
important one. Yeah.
Yeah, we moved to group snack about, I don't know, 8 years ago, and we've never moved back because the children love to prepare it, then set the table, then all eat together. And that's such a beautiful process as well about sharing food. There's washing up, there's hand washing, flower arranging, all those kind of things. We have the art and craft area, which we actually just call self-expression in the toddler class
Mhm.
because they're not really making or drawing anything, but they're
Right.
expressing their bodies, they're expressing themselves. So we have beautiful quality, like pencils that they can draw with, or we have scissors that they learn to cut, snip strips. We have sewing and those kind of things as well. We have that language area that we talked about earlier. And a movement area is also great with music and movement.
Yeah.
So I hope that helps. Yeah.
Yes, and we'll put a link of Simone did a beautiful video of the environment where she shows all of the different areas, so that will be helpful. We'll
Yeah.
link that up later. So we have Amanda on the call, and she actually had sent us a question earlier about she is a guide in the classroom with 3 to 6 year olds and is having trouble with a almost 3 year old disrupting nap time and wanted our
Really big.
advice. So I'd hold on, there was somebody.
That's
So for me, when I read that question, I was like, oh my gosh, that's a tough one because I remember being in the classroom, right? You have a rhythm to your day, and after lunch we clean up and then we have some quiet time, and some of them do actually nap and fall asleep. And then there's those that don't want to nap or are resisting nap and can be, disruptive. So for me, when I saw that question, I had ideas, but and Simone, please jump in. But one was, maybe this child just, this is not a conducive place for them to nap, or they don't feel safe to nap there. And can we give them something else to do? Can there be quiet time? Can there be just sitting quietly and reading a book? And Amanda, I'm sure you've tried some of this, but and then there is also talking to the parents of, maybe the full day they're not quite ready, and it would be better that they be picked up and nap at home. Don't know if that is a possibility. And sometimes for me, what has worked in the past is that those children that are, quote unquote disruptive end up being your better helpers. So it's almost like inviting this child to help you put the other ones to sleep. Maybe help them, put the blankets on their friends, or help you set up the beds, or just giving them that significance and belonging about being in that community. And also really maybe, focusing on the story time before, of really focusing on this situation. How can we help each other? Everybody needs to sleep. And this is part of like positive discipline when we do classroom meetings. To me, it's wonderful to see how children will help you resolve kind of these situations that can be problematic for the community.
Yeah, I think that you're right that they're good helpers. But I worked in a nursery, a Montessori nursery that went up to 4 years old. So we had one room that was napping, and then we have 2.5-year-olds who are not napping anymore. And I know that in the question it says the child naps at home, but I would say that they're probably giving up their nap. So if they're going to be awake in your environment anyway, I would have them with the staff who are preparing the meals, client tidying up, and being your best helper out of the room. I think is probably the least disruptive, because if they really need your help, then you're like, we can't be disruptive because we have so many things we have to get done here. So we really need you to put all of these things over here. And if you want to have a quiet time, then you can just set up a quiet corner and that kind of thing, so that I think I'm looking at the developmental needs of that child, and it doesn't sound like that's the space for them. If I don't know how new they are in the space and that kind of thing, but yeah, safety, you don't fall asleep in a space where you don't feel safe. If it's a very different sleeping environment than she has at home, then that could also be problematic as well. So I think I'd be looking at the big picture of like, if it's not possible for them not to nap in your space. Maybe they could go to an older classroom and go and visit, where the children are still awake and are doing things, because 3 years old, they're on the cusp of growing out of the toddler environment anyway.
Yeah.
So I hope that helps.
I hope that helps, Amanda. Not sure if you tried all that except having her picked up earlier. Okay. And we
Yeah.
only have one classroom is her answer. So yeah, that makes it a bit difficult. But yeah, I mean, and I know you had mentioned in your question too that sometimes you take her into the office. So maybe in the office, if she just, has a book, and that is kind of the options that she has, right? Of she or he, I'm not sure, um, of staying, lying down with her friends, and or coming and sitting quietly and reading in the office with you. So, okay, hope that helps. All righty. Do you have another question, Simone?
I do have more questions.
Okay, okay.
I'm sorry that we can't help you with more detail, Amanda, but I think having someone to come and observe and see how this child also is during the rest of the day. If it's just nap time, then I think it's, yeah. Otherwise, just having to come up with really creative thinking, and it's very, very hard
And
for
if and
in
if
that
and if
environment.
the family situation is that they are able to pick this child up early, I would definitely, that would be kind of my best option, because maybe they will continue to nap at home, but they're not quite ready to do that in a community setting. So,
Yeah. Okay, good. She's going to try
oh,
some
we
other.
appreciate you too. Thank you. She says, thank you. I love you both. Thank
Um,
you.
okay, so what to do when you feel all theory doesn't come together? I'm trying to help a very physical 5-year-old find ways to calm his nervous system when I'm triggered by behaviors that show no compassion to others, mocking, destroying things, or hurting others, little siblings. It's a good one, huh?
Yes, yes. Can you just repeat the very beginning?
Yeah, what to do when you feel like all the theory doesn't come together. I'm trying to help a very physical 5-year-old find ways to calm his nervous system when I'm triggered by behaviors that show no compassion to others, mocking, destroying things, or hurting others, the little sibling. And honestly, I think that it's about regulating their nervous system as much as possible by, like, there's a book called Self-Reg, which we can, link to in the show notes.
Self-ray?
Self-reg, like for
Okay,
short for
okay, okay.
self-regulation. I did a summary of it, so I'll share the self-reg summary. But it's super interesting because if you have anything, there's 5 domains, and I'm not going to sure I'm going to remember off the top of my head, but you have like your physical domain, and if you aren't sleeping well, or if you are hungry or whatever, then your behavior already is out. Or if you're emotionally, if something sad happened or something difficult happened, then again your regulation's out. And then there's cognitive, like if you're making a learning leap, then also your regulation's out. So you have all these domains that are impacting on each other and being layers. So if this child is 5 and they're not showing compassion, all those kind of things, they're telling you they're having a hard time, that they're dysregulated right now. And I love that you're asking, like, who is this child? How can I help regulate them? And in the book, there's so many different ways. Like, does rocking help the child? Does banging on something and moving, having physical touch and squeezing, all of those kind of things. Ways that they can relax their nervous system could be blowing bubbles through a straw, or it could be sucking yogurt through a straw as well, like those kind of things. But also, like in neutral times when they're not wound up, that's when you can have conversations with them. Say, like, when you're having a hard time, what's the best thing? I know that Jane Nelson from Positive Discipline
Hmm.
loves having like a quiet space, like a
Hmm.
calm corner. And so it's not a punishment corner, but it's somewhere where they can kind of go to chill out. But also, if they're starting to be dangerous, like with siblings and things like that, it's like, I think it's time that we go and cool down in our calm corner. And, even if you need to go with them, then you can sit, and there might be some sparkly lights that help them. Or maybe the sparkly lights is too much. Or maybe it's like they get sensory stimulation. So you need like an environment where they can put on some headphones and put on a heavy blanket, the weighted blankets on top of them. So there's actually, like, if you Google sensory activities, even though it may not be sensory related, they're all ways that kind of tend to help relax the nervous
Yeah.
system. So I
And
do
and
that.
I and I will add too, I remember I had a child in my classroom, so he was a little bit younger, but very disruptive and taking things from other children and all this. And then suddenly for me, it was about he just needed more physical work. So it was like big, heavy work. And I promise it's like it was it was like a pile of wood, I think, of logs that we moved from one side of the garden to the other. And then I was like, oh no, let's move it to the other side. And he was just very physical. And after a few days of that, he did calm. He was able to kind of settle in. So sometimes it's just like this excess energy, or I'm having a flashback with my son who sometimes would come home and say, I just need to run around, and he would run around in circles in our backyard, right? So I think sometimes just offering them a way to exert all of that excess energy that they might have, is a good thing. I might ask also if there's screens involved, to avoid any screens at this age, because that tends to kind of ramp up that nervous energy. So,
Yeah, I have some other thoughts as well. One thing is that every child needs to feel like they belong. And if instead they've taken on this role of being the one that mocks and all that kind of thing, actually, what is their important role? I'm not sure if this is in a family situation or in
right,
a school
right,
environment, but it's like, what is their role? Like some of these kids who have got a lot of energy, they need to be the one who puts on the Spotify playlist for dinner, who, does go and collect all of the laundry from all of the baskets so that they can help you. What can be their special role? How do they belong in our family or in our classroom? Everyone needs to feel important. And so
right,
that could also be really helpful. The other thing I noticed is in the question, it says that the adult is being triggered by their behavior, the lack of compassion for others, which is completely normal, except that it's also completely normal for a child to have a hard time. So then we have to do the work on ourselves. How am I going to deal with the triggering behavior so that I can relax my nervous system? Because when I've got a relaxed nervous system, I can co-regulate with the child. But when I'm activated, then I'm just reacting as opposed to responding to the child.
yeah, yeah,
So I think that's also really important. Then in neutral times, we could talk about grace and courtesy lessons and like what skills are they missing? Like if they are frustrated and that's why they're hitting, like, and it goes back to observation, like why are they making a hard time for everybody? So are their needs being met? Because if you're not challenging them and their needs are not being met, then they are going to challenge you. So
right,
I think that's also really
yeah,
important. And then the last thing is I'm not sure how close they are to six or not, but if they're
mhm.
5.5 already, they may be moving into the second plane of development, in which case one time they feel like a 6-year-old and they feel really big and they're being a bit rude, and that's part of a 6-year-old to 12-year-old, they're trying out moral things and need to know what's right and wrong and all of these kind of things, and how is the parent or the adult going to be in the environment. And sometimes they're going to act like the 4-year-old, so they're going to be a little bit discombobulated maybe, and it's very confusing for the adult as well. So I
Yeah.
just wanted to put that out there as well.
Yeah, those are all great. And I'll just piggyback on the one thing you said about that calm corner, and
Mm.
that the conversation is, for me, it's really important to help children understand the messages that their bodies are giving them, right? So really in those calm moments where you're having those conversations, is asking like, what are you feeling in your body when before you get angry, or you throw things, or you push someone, or is your body giving you a signal that maybe you need to go and breathe or calm yourself? And there we can also ask, like, what do you think helps you calm, right? Maybe it's going outside barefoot and grounding yourself, or it's a glass of water, or it's some music, or whatever it might be. But I think it's really important to help them have that introspection to understand that their body is also giving them a message as to when they're gonna kind of poof, blow up. So yeah.
Yeah, and it's hard for some children to do the breathing thing, but breathing in like the smelling the flower and blowing out the candle.
Hmm.
And actually, it's really good. Like if you're triggered as well, then let's breathe
Exactly.
together.
Exactly. And finding for the adult is finding, also knowing what's in your calming bag. Like, what are some techniques that you can do to help yourself, be not triggered. Because remember, and I think we do have a whole show on positive discipline and all of that, but that whole idea of mirror neurons, right? Where you're being triggered, your brain is going offline, their brain, and there's no way for us to calm each other when we're both kind of out of sorts. So we have to focus on calming ourselves first to be able to help this child. So yeah,
I'm going
great
to
question. Love it.
yeah, I'm going to put in the chat for those people who are live on the call. What things do you do to help calm yourselves when the child or children you're looking after are dysregulated? And then we can add that as well and pop them in the chat, and we can share them on the show so that people can think, oh yeah, I haven't tried that.
Great idea.
Some
Yeah.
people also, I just was speaking to a friend, and cortisol can build up in our bodies when there's stress, right? And shaking, you could get them to shake
Yes.
the stress
Yes.
out. That actually physically moves the cortisol out of their body. So if they're feeling like in fight or flight for some reason, then that's also something to think about as
Shaking,
well.
jumping. Yes, definitely. Wonderful. Being out in nature. Great.
Right. That sounds good. Should we do one from the questions that came in earlier?
Sure, sure. So I'm going to read it. It's a little long. It's anonymous. It says my son just turned 4 and his behavior has changed a lot. So it's similar to this one. He has become quite rude and disruptive at times. He was a very calm baby and didn't have particular bad tantrums as a toddler. No terrible twos. No, it's the terrific twos, remember. He has started shouting a lot and throwing things around whenever we have people over. We had people over the other day, and he threw food across the table and hurt a friend with one of his toys. When he did this, I took him upstairs and spent some quiet time with him talking. I explained he couldn't hurt people. He said he was very tired. He seems to get shy in certain situations. He doesn't like saying hello to people and won't say sorry when he does. Something's wrong. Generally, he is a kind, intelligent child who plays well with other children, but has really started acting out in some groups. Do you have any advice on how to deal with it? I feel like I'm making it worse at the moment. Oh, I'm sorry. You're doing your best. So that's important. And just you asking for advice and help is a good thing. Um, how would you help this 4-year-old, Simone?
Yeah, I think that when she says that they didn't have the terrible twos, it actually can make it harder at 4 because the terrible 4s are like bigger and huger, you know? So it's like when they're going through it and you have tantrums at 2, be happy that they're having tantrums at 2. I have seen this happen when a child, you're able to always manage their emotions and things like that. You're able to predict their behaviors. And then it gets to 4 and they haven't learned actually how to calm themselves down. So it comes out in some big ways. But I think you're right, though. If you're in company and they're not behaving in a way that's appropriate, then we can just say if this isn't appropriate, we're going to find a calm place to calm down, and we can talk to them there. At neutral times, practice saying sorry, the grace and courtesy lessons about how we apologize. But honestly, in Montessori we don't force them to say sorry because you often get a sorry, or they don't
Right,
say sorry.
right.
So they're still in the absorbent mind phase, so we can keep modeling it, but we can practice the grace and courtesy. But also, like, what else could they do to make a repair? That's so in my classroom, if there was pushing, I would help the child to come back and maybe get a cloth or a tissue and like offer it to the other child, or a wet cloth for someone who's hurt, something like this, so that they're learning. Even when I get it wrong, I can make it right again. So
Mm,
lecturing is kind of not going to help.
mm.
Making them feel bad isn't going to help. But taking responsibility for what they've done wrong will make it help. But at that moment when they're dysregulated and they're throwing things, they're not going to be able to say, like, you can't say, "Oh, come over here and tidy up." They've flipped their lid, like in the Dan Siegel and Tina Payne Bryson book,
Mhm.
they talk about flipping your lid, and you can't do the rational thing. So first we have to help them to calm down, and probably in another room if there's also visitors there. And then once they're calm, then you can say, we did something that was upsetting and we need to make it up to those other people. So I think that those kind of things could help. Did anything coming up for you?
Well, and also for me, it's also about kind of having some preemptive activities. So when you know you're having guests over, is kind of going through the grace and courtesy of what do we do? How do we act? Are there, um, sometimes children are upset that other children are in their space and touching their toys and everything. So it's almost like we have to prepare this little boy to be okay with it and to have maybe an option of what he can do instead. So maybe he can come be next to you or sit on your lap or like give him choices that you're going to be okay with when he's feeling again that notion of sometimes helping them understand that their body is giving them a signal before it kind of erupts so that they have they have an option, right? To just come and sit with you. Maybe it's too much. Maybe, shy is not for me something bad. It's just a phase of maybe they're just observing. Maybe they just want to take time to get to know who these people are, and that's okay. But giving them the opportunity to do that in a safe, comforting place.
Yeah, I think that makes sense too, because like all of us respond differently to people in our homes or to big groups. Just my two children alone would react very differently. And there's like when they're feeling overstimulated, is there a place that they can go to relax? Or actually, is it better not to have so many people at a house? Like, is it better to meet someone in a playground? So start to observe your child and see what's going to meet their needs, so that you can prepare an environment that they flourish in, or that they have the skills how to take themselves away from that if they
Right,
find it too
right.
much.
And then also, the simple ones are, are they tired? Are they hungry, right? It could be just that time of day where they're hangry and that's we all react differently that way. So
Yeah,
yeah.
it does say that he said he was very tired. So yeah,
So yeah.
they
Yeah.
can also just have bad days, right?
We all do, right? I think sometimes we put our children to a higher level uh and yeah, we have good days and bad days. So
Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely.
yeah. All righty.
Which
Um, do you
I
have
have one
another
here.
question? Yeah.
Yeah. What are the essentials to a well-prepared environment? So we touched on the toddler environment, but why don't we just talk about in general like a home environment?
So, what is the essential to a well-prepared environment?
What are the essentials? Yeah. What would you include in a well-prepared environment? Like, for example, a
Oh,
newborn. You do this all the time. You help families
yes.
set up their
Well,
newborn
it's
environments.
it's about a well-prepared adult.
Yes.
It's the first essential, right? It can be any type of physical environment, but it is that adult that is observant, that is compassionate, that tunes into themselves and self-regulate because our children need us to be able to self-regulate. So it's really about, I think, learning and understanding human development and understanding what the different phases of development that our children are going to be going through to be able to be maybe one little step ahead of time so that you can anticipate their needs. Um, and then, in general, like the physical is really order. For me, it's simplicity. It's being able to know where things are. Children are making sense of their world, so order is very important to them. It helps them, classify. So minimize the amount of toys and activities you have a specific place for each activities of whether it's getting dressed, whether it's preparing food, whether it's their toys, would be kind of the general overview. I was telling Simone before we got on the call, I visited with a 9-day-old yesterday, And I just started fixing the environment because it just was chaotic, but it was chaotic for the mother who is in bed resting and there's all these boxes and things everywhere. So I just kind of cleared it off so that she could have a more restful, visual environment around her, and she was very thankful, right? But those are the small things that I think are so important for our children who are adapting. Like that's their task is to adapt. So preparing a very, orderly environment, to me is the best.
And what's super interesting is like people might say, well, that's important for the young child because they have this very strong sense of order. They have a sensitive period for order. But even like well, 3 to 6 year olds definitely likes everything in their place and knowing where things belong. But even the 6 to 12 year olds who are no longer interested in the external order because they're so busy organizing the internal stuff, they need the external order because they're not thinking of it. So they need to know, where are my musical instruments kept? Like, where do I put them back? If I come home and I have my lunchbox, then I have the process of putting it in the kitchen or washing it up or putting it in the dishwasher, whatever it works in your house. So they need that kind of order even when they're resisting it. So, for example, 6 to 12 year olds love big work. And Junifer, when we were writing the Montessori child book, sent me a video of her children making a fort out of the couch on the balcony, upside down with all these blankets and a whole couch. And then the agreement, though, is that everything will return to where it was so that we can then have our order back. So you need that order so they know how to recreate the order when they've made the big mess.
Yeah.
So just to say that, yes, order is important for this. The points of references for the newborn, but also through all the ages. The less is more is important for all the ages. Even when my children were 6 to 12, I still had a shelf where I would display activities and they'd help me rotate them. But when I put everything into a cupboard, because I thought they can find their own Lego, they never opened the cupboard. So then they grab the low picking fruit, which is whatever's maybe nowadays it's a device that's sitting on the table. You need to put
Mhm.
away the screens and instead have attractive things that they're
Mhm.
engaging with. Um, so I think that's also really interesting is like, yes, you might think that it's nice to make a Montessori shelf for your baby and your toddler, but actually keep going and instead of spending a lot of money on items, put money into storage so that you can store things when you observe when they're not using them anymore, rotate them, and then your kids will keep using all of their things for a lot longer as well. And I think one thing that's really important in Montessori homes is to build independence into the space as much as possible. And this isn't because we want them to be grown up, it's because they actually thrive on having this being part of the family and having a role and an important task. Like we talked about belonging at the beginning of the call. And so
And,
I'm
and
always surprised.
independence is a basic human need. Like they need it, right? So like
Yeah,
you say,
autonomy.
setting it up, to have that autonomy is so important.
So from like for example, a child who can walk can already go and get a glass of water. So you can just have a small jug and a little water. You don't have to have a fancy water station or IKEA kitchen or anything, just access to some water. Being able to dress themselves. So having simple selection of clothes that they can help themselves. And for older children, going through regularly and clearing out their cupboards so that when you have finished the laundry, they can actually put it away themselves. But sometimes our drawers are too full, so then the child doesn't learn to do it. And so looking at independence can be having some bath hooks for every member of the family. Is there enough space for everyone to be able to hang up their own towel? Yeah, and even just having simple things like a laundry basket or hamper, however you call it, where so that as the children learn to get undressed to have their shower or bath, they put the things in the hamper. And then when you have teenagers, they're so used to doing it. It's not like that you need to worry.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
you can just say, "Oh,
Yeah.
I'm actually putting on some wash." If you
Yeah.
want anything, it needs to go into the laundry hamper, and that's as easy as
Yeah.
that. It doesn't have to be a battle.
And just to go back, as you said, essential for me, I always think of the just the four basic areas that we think of, at least for the for the work that I do when I'm, setting up, helping families set up for their newborn. The four basic areas is really the sleeping area, the feeding area, the personal hygiene area, and then movement, right? Where we're really setting up those four areas as points of reference so that children know what is expected of them when they're, laid down on their floor bed, for example, or they're laid down on the changing table. They know that they will be, taken care of. And then all of these areas evolve as they grow older and they become, like you say, more independent and autonomous. So,
And I think the last essential I would say is make it attractive, right?
yes.
One thing, if you walk into a Montessori environment, you're like, this looks engaging, this looks beautiful. And once I had the opportunity to go in New York to redo someone's home, and they had children who were like 5 and 6 years old, I think, and everything was packed into the cupboards. And you open the cupboards, and like everything would just fall on your head. And so I spent the day going through all the cupboards, taking it all out, finding amazing things. I'm like, wow, these are amazing. But the children would never have known. So then I
Right.
set them out on some trays and made it attractive. And like she said that they walked in and they weren't upset that I'd been through the things. They were so excited about all these new toys that they had. And it's like, they're not new toys. They were always in your cupboard. But making things
Yeah.
attractive, like, and for a baby or a toddler, sitting on the floor, what does it actually feel like to be a baby or a toddler in this house? Like you kind of said, how chaotic it felt with the boxes and things around. It would also be that's what the babies and the toddlers are absorbing. And I went to visit a home once, and they had some old speakers up really high above the bookshelves and all the mess and clutter, thinking, well, that's very attractive down here. But if you sat on the floor, it felt very heavy, or very top heavy.
Mm-hmm.
And when I spoke to them about it, said, oh, we haven't used them in 5 years, we'll get rid of them. And when I came back the next time, it felt so much calmer.
Yeah. Yeah. Decluttering is very calming. Yeah. Well,
Yeah,
hopefully that helps. Thank you.
absolutely.
Um, so I have another question here that was sent ahead of time. So first it says, so sad your show will be coming to an end. Oh, but we have, hold on. Uh, so, wishing you both the best. My question is about meal times. I
Mhm.
find it really hard keeping both of my children at the table. Usually, my daughter, almost 7 year old, leaves the table first, having eaten a few forks spoonful. The only way to keep her is dessert. On the other hand, my son, who is 4 years old and a very active child, has a hard time being seated. He finds himself eating while getting off his chair, walking around the table, and climbing back up. Sometimes I end the meal, and half an hour later, my daughter asks for something to eat. Other times, I feed my son since he seems tired and he ends up eating. And I may even serve dessert to take the edge off of it and hopefully have them eating some more of a regular meal after it. It definitely is not consistent, but my will to have them seated exceeds me being firm around the table. I would love to listen to your guidance. Thank you in advance. Wow. Okay. So eating family meals together. First of all, I commend you because sitting down every day together is so important to have this regular thing. I would start, personally, I would start with just on a daily basis, just reminding what the expectations are, right? We sit down together, we have some food, and we wait until everybody is done eating. So for young children, that can be difficult. So it's about maybe having, in the back of your mind or in your back pocket, some conversation starters or some storytelling or some things that are engaging to stay around the table. The other thing I would like to remind is that the adult must also stay seated. So think ahead and make sure you have everything you need on that table so that you are not getting up to go get the water, the salt and pepper, the whatever is missing because right they see us. So it's really about focusing to sit together. Also having them involved in setting the table, in preparing the food, all of that will, for me, help have that belonging where they want to participate. Maybe dressing up the table so that it's more engaging, things like that. How about you, Simone?
Yeah, I think the what I'm missing is kind and clear guidance
Kind
from.
and clear. Yes, yes.
So if you let them get up after two bites, then they're going to take that, right? If you
Right.
let them feed you, they're going to expect you to feed them. So I think that I would start with making a family meeting and talking about making some agreements because they're old enough, they're 7 and 4, they're not super young children. So these children can stay at the table, they can wait until everyone's finished. There are some exceptions with children who may be neurodivergent, who can't sit still, and these kind of things. And then you're going to have to decide how's that going to work in your family. Are they going to have a chair that can accommodate that they can wobble on? Are they allowed to get up, do some 10 jacks, and then they come sit back down again? But how do you manage it and be very predictable? Because if you don't, if you're not clear, then the kids aren't clear. So to me, I would be like, I would be clear that we sit at the table, like all the things that Jean-Marie said, but that would have to be kind of agreements about them being involved in the meal time. So they set the table, they prepare the meal, then they're going to be more interested in eating the meal. Are they snacking a lot between meals? And is that why they only take two, bites
Hmm.
to
Hmm.
eat? Can you make a log of what your child eats so that you can make sure that you have something that on the table that they always like? 7 or 4 year olds often like to make their own food kind of thing. So like having tacos where you can fill up the toppings and
Hmm.
everyone
Hmm.
makes their own, that could keep a child busy. It's really hard for, we're just making some generalized comments, but you need to observe your child, what they eat. Like some children are picky eaters, some children are easy eaters, so you need to know what works for your family,
Yeah.
and physical needs, like make sure that they've done some running if they really find hard to sit down at the table, so that when it's mealtime, yeah, make it attractive. I really like that as well, what you said. And then when you're worried about how much they're eating, you're worried, then they're picking up that you're worried. And actually, we are trying in Montessori to have children be able to listen to their own bodies about when they're hungry and when they're full. So instead of saying, oh, you have another bite, if they choose not to feed themselves, then the meal's done. We take it to the table and we don't open up the kitchen after half an hour. It's just they wait till the next meal. So I
Yeah.
start at the beginning of the day and do this for like 7 days. Just be kind and clear and consistent that we sit down, everyone eats. When they're finished, they take their plate to the kitchen and the meal's done. Start again at lunchtime. No, have no snacks while you're kind of readjusting the whole thing. It sounds
Right.
really serious and strict, but actually you haven't had any rules, so or clear, and even not rules, but agreements, So, oh, we've agreed that we're sitting at the table. Yeah, it's time to sit at the
Yeah.
table. You can do that in a kind way, so kind and clear. That's what I'm missing. So
Yeah.
I hope that
Yeah.
helps.
No, no, and that's great. And I would also just reiterate that to be careful to not be the short order cook, right? It's your daughter got up at the table, she was done. She's hungry again in a while. It's like, oh well, dinner's over. Well, I'll make you a nice healthy breakfast. Like because I think that that's she knows that she can get up and that, if she's hungry, she'll eat later. So being, like Simone says, really kind and clear and consistent of we eat together. And this is, I don't know where this question is coming from, but I know that for me, it's a very also kind of culturally different. Like I see, American families are grazing all day long and a family meal is pretty uncommon as opposed to European families where it's really breakfast, lunch, and dinner. There's maybe one snack in the afternoon, but that's it. So there is that expectation of children that this is when we eat, when we feed ourselves. So being very kind and clear, like Simone says, to also yourself, like what are your family rules and values, and how do you want to set that
Yeah.
up? So I hope that helps.
And also to have compassion for you because it is hard. Like they can get really silly at meal times and it's really hard to keep you cool. So, as, have
Yeah,
grace with
yeah,
yourself. We feel you and you're doing your best. And now maybe just practice some of the kind and clear and see
yeah.
how it
And
goes.
don't worry about, they're not having enough food because like Simone says, they need to learn what their body needs. And I think that if we really respect that. Children are highly intelligent as to what they need. Some days they'll just eat protein, another day they'll, eat only carbs, and that's okay. That's just their body asking for what it needs. So always, I think our responsibility, there's I forget there's a phrase about our responsibility is to put quality, nutritious food to have a set time and a set location, and then it's their responsibility as to what they put in their body.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah, we're responsible for when they eat, where they eat, and what they're eating. Yeah.
right.
And
Yeah.
then
Yeah.
they do the
Yeah.
rest. Exactly. I've got a couple of last questions, so this is
Okay.
perfect
Okay.
timing.
Okay.
I love this question. It says, how to evolve Montessori when upbringing and screens are changing children's development? And so I'm happy to start with this one.
Yes, please.
Because I love when I did the 6 to 12 assistance training with Alison Oars, she said that the developmental needs of children are not changing, right? They're the same. They've been the same through the whole of humanity, but the world is changing.
Hmm.
But that means that we need to go back and observe the child in front of us, not put the screens and things in this first 6 years. We can also link to the um, show that we did on screens.
Yes.
Not putting screens in their hands in the first 6 years, but then finding ways that screens can be used as a tool rather than as a toy or a passive thing in the 6 to 12, and then becoming more independent with technology in 12 to 18. Um, so you want them to adapt to their time and place. So it's not saying no screens forever, but it means that it needs to be done in a very conscious way so that young children are still sensorial learners. They need to smell things, they need to taste things, they need to feel things, they need to see things and hear things. So that's the most important part of development. So even when the world's changing with screens and technology, the first 6 year olds, they shouldn't even really notice that the world has changed in some ways. And we need to, I just did a beautiful call with Zoe, who's going to be doing a 0 to 3
Oh, nice.
deep
Yes.
dive
Hmm.
course.
Hmm.
And, she's talking about how we actually need to make the time. We can't be too busy. It's our responsibility to give
Hmm.
them this. So to slow down, to actually slow down our pace of life that seems like it's out of control. And I really think that a lot of Montessori families are very effective at it, that we really have quality relationships, that it says can be just simply going for a walk at the child's pace. It doesn't need more and more and more. Um, but so I think if you kind of think, yes, the world's changing, I'm going to adapt and introduce screens and technology in a conscious way with it being used as an active tool, because we're using technology right now, but it's a good way of using technology. And I think if you put technology in the hands of Montessori children, I think, there's amazing possibilities what might happen.
And I think the whole, screen conversation too is about how the adult is using the screen when they are with children, right? Because children are observing, they're absorbing everything. So, no wonder the child always wants your phone because you're always on it. Like, oh my gosh, it must be so fun, whatever this black thing you keep on looking at and interacting with. So, being very aware of what you're doing, with the screen. And I know, and I think it's in the show you will link, but I remember we talked about when we do pick up our phone, saying out loud what we're doing. Oh, I need to send a message to, Daddy to pick up some milk. And then you do it and you put it away, right? So being very, very conscientious of how you're using technology too in front of children is super important so that you can make that time to be with them and give them all those sensory activities that they need for their development.
Yeah, and looking at the human tendencies, they still exist even when, the world is changing. We need to move, we need to communicate, and these are very important parts.
Yeah,
So look at
yeah,
your children's needs and making sure that they're still met. So that's why I think that Montessori still applies more than ever, even after 100 years. We actually have this amazing blueprint of helping children to develop no matter what happens in the world. And they're
yeah.
going to become citizens of this world. So we don't box them off from society, but they start to in their family, then they might have daycare and other situations, then they move into school, they start working in their community. And then by the time they're 12 to 18, then they're getting excited about the whole world, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, it doesn't have to be overwhelming for children under 6, and we'll introduce those concepts gradually in developmentally appropriate ways.
Yeah. And I do have to say, and it might not sound um appropriate or whatever, but I'll say it anyways, is that all of the quote unquote Montessori apps that I see out there are not Montessori. Like for the young child, they should not be doing, activities on a phone or an iPad. Like they need to be doing it, manipulating and using all 10 fingers and walking around, not swiping on an iPad. Like that's marketing BS. So just have to say that.
All right, we have one last question for our last
Okay,
show,
okay.
and it was how can we guide the adults, the parents in our environments to independence? And so I wrote back to the person who posted this question on Instagram, and basically they're having trouble with the adults in the environment like reading the parent handbook, coming to they have great parent education evenings. They tell people who they're meant to give the information to, but they give it to the wrong person. And so they were curious, how do we get our parents on board, like, being part of, yeah, taking responsibility and following some of the guidance that we're giving them. Do you have any thoughts, Jean Marie?
Well, I would have some like classroom meetings, but parent meeting and kind of make it somewhat, clear and kind, like we do with the children, of this is part of your responsibility. If you, want your child in this community, this is also your responsibility to be here. And here are what we expect of all of you, and kind of have some sort of I don't know, contract or agreement that this is a responsibility. Like being an adult that is part of this community, comes with these responsibilities, and it's, you know, maybe reading the handbook. Sometimes, we have different ways of learning for the adults. So, maybe it's a Zoom call where you go over the handbook so we don't actually have to read it. Or, some people don't have time or don't like reading, or maybe it's a audio recording of you reading it. Or like we have to be, I think, inventive and think outside of the box for our adult learners too. And maybe making it, you know, uh, fun where they have to answer a question and they'll I don't know, respond. I mean, I'm trying to think outside the box, but yeah, I was challenged with parents. Like the parents who showed up at the meetings were not the ones that really needed to be there. It was always the ones that, we were, maybe having frustration was were the ones that never bothered to come, and that can be very frustrating. Yeah.
Yeah, so I've worked with parents in my classroom for many
Yeah.
years,
Yeah.
being a parent-child class. And what I see is that every parent is on their own journey. And so
Mm.
there are some who know a lot, and there are some people who are very busy, and it's like the last thing that they have time for. And I think of like an adolescent program where a child's late to school. And in Montessori, we don't give them punishments, but we really say, we really want you to get here on time. How can we help you to get here on time?
Right.
So then
Right.
I would really break it down. Like I'm making sure the information is accessible in many different formats. We're talking about them one-on-one, but then really like, okay, this family is really having trouble getting here on time. So I'd have a meeting about how can we help you get here on time, because and why, and then you have an opportunity to also talk about why it's important that the children come on time because of the flow of the
Mm.
class and things. Or is there a way that it's an exception? Or, we have to kind of consider that there's a lot going on for families right now. So just us telling these rules is like us just telling the rules to the kids, and it has to be an agreement. It's a living document. This is working, this isn't working, how can we make it better for everybody? I think having really fun, engaging kind of every quarter to have something fun happening with the family so that then you might be playing some handball kind of tournament or something like that. And the families can come along and then you can joke and you can have an opportunity in a relaxed way to also connect.
Yeah.
And when you
Yeah.
feel connected and you feel like you belong, then you're more
Right.
likely to
Right.
actually do. So this is just like we do with the children.
Yeah. Building community is so important, and it's, like you say, not having just, a strict meeting, but, it's a potluck, or it's somebody is going to share, what they do. And I think that is way more engaging. And then parents are building community with each other. So yeah.
You could
And they
also
do
like
have
work
very
out how
busy
they could,
lives.
yeah,
Yeah.
that they have like carpool so they can all help each other.
Yeah.
Really make it like we're supporting each other and the parents are part of this community. I know it feels like that's more work, but actually you'll find that when you get the parents on board, it actually will help the whole thing. So
Definitely. Definitely. Yeah. And maybe having a parent help you too, right? Like parents have a different perspective. So maybe having a little parent community of, parent engagement or whatever, might be helpful as well. All righty. This has been great. Lots of great questions for
yeah, it
this
was really
last
fun.
show. Mm.
Exactly. And we have a little song to sing at the end of this. At the end of each course, when I have the 3-year-olds graduating and moving on to another class, we sing a song. So we thought we might sing goodbye to the Montessori show and to all of you out there. Maybe we'll pop in from time to time. Thanks, Jamina. She said, thank you so much. But we'll do this. It goes, goodbye, the Montessori show. Goodbye, Montessori show. We will miss you. We will miss you. We hope you enjoy your new something. We hope you enjoy your new class. Come back soon. Come back soon. So it was very nice to get to share all of our Montessori passion with you all. Thank you all for showing up all these years. And Jean-Marie, thank you for being my co-host in the Montessori show for all these years.
Yes, no,
And
it's been
good
it's
things
been
have
it's
come to
been
an end.
delightful. Hard to believe it's been 9 years, but it's been quite a joy to be able to answer these questions, to spend some time with you, and to hopefully make a positive difference in the world. So thank you, everybody, and thank you, Simone.
Thank you all so much. Thanks, Jean-Marie.
Bye.
Thanks, Lisa. She says thanks very much.
Bye bye.
Bye.